El efecto mariposa, una película oscura tanto delante como detrás de cámara. Ya me lo había contado Irina Gorobaya. Esta fue la película por la que dejó de actuar. Ahora le sumo el testimonio de Cameron Bright, que entre tantas otras cosas me habló de lo que recuerda del tutor denunciado tiempo después por pedofilia. Mira.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
I probably watched it for the first time when I was like 10 or 11. And yeah, that was the point where I was like, man, this movie is pretty depressing.
Yeah.
Moments in life we choose to remember. And some memories we can never forget.
How much did they explain to you about what was going on in that moment of those kids?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, and that's the thing. That was my first feature that I was in was the Butterfly Effects. So that was definitely my first big role. And it's actually interesting. So Jackie, the lady that I mentioned before, my acting coach, her son was actually in that with me as well. So like my friend and her son, he played the the one that we all pick on, the chubbier kid. He played at the same age as me. But yeah, the way that they filmed that, basically they did the age group. Yeah, it was definitely very dark, but I don't know, they did a very good job at kind of, I don't know, I guess like I don't think it needed much explanation.
Okay, yeah.
Like definitely like, for the most part, most of the scenes were pretty chill. We just kind of acted and that was about that. I was like 7 or 8, I think. But I don't really remember them ever, explaining too much. And it was just
Yeah.
kind of one of those movies that like, I don't know. It's like that movie I've heard about plenty, and it's one of those movies where like it's like watch at your own risk almost, like it's one of those movies where it's kind of like, yeah, over the years I've been asked about it plenty of times. They're like, oh, should I watch that movie? Like, oh, what's it about? I'm like, well, pretty much what sums it up is that the main character kills himself in the end, and you're happy that he did it. And everyone's just kind of like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, it's just one of those movies,
And you get to be the star.
I thought I was the star.
Hey, what did I tell you?
They almost work you harder because you don't get breaks. Like you're there, like, yeah, they can't work you past 10 hours, but within that 10 hours, you're basically working the whole time. If you're not working, well, then you're in school because they have to put you in school. But it's like, that's where the, it would always tax on me was I would film for 4 hours and then my co-star who's 35 years old gets to go hang out, have a glass of water and kick their feet up for 30 minutes where I'm getting thrown in school for 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden I'm back to work. And it's like, well, yeah, you've had 30 minutes to rest, but I've been reading a book for 30 minutes doing schoolwork and now I have to work. I would hide on set. I'd like hide behind furniture. I would be happier hiding behind a piece of furniture for 30 minutes than sitting in school for 30 minutes. It's just stuff like that, right?
Now, what did I tell you about keeping that door shut?
But I want to see.
You're gonna see the back of my fist in about 2 seconds. You don't do what I tell you.
Probably like the worst part I remember about that was getting slapped in the head like 20 different times, and it was like, it was funny because he was doing it so nice and it was just, like nothing, like barely touching me, never touching me, whatever. And then the one time he, kind of accidentally, definitely kind of like smacked me on the head a little bit. And I had to go upstairs. And it was funny because the upstairs literally just like led out onto this balcony in a studio. So it was just like me standing on this like fake balcony in the middle of nowhere. And so I had gone up there and the one time he did hit me, he hit me pretty good. And I like a tear came out of my eye. And it was funny because I was like, please let that be the last one. And they finally were like, yeah, that was it. That was the one. And I was like, of course it was. He was like, I'm so sorry. I definitely hit you. I was like, all good, man.
Now, in this part of the story, Robin Hood has just married Maid Marian.
That movie was fine. Everyone on set was great. I actually ended up befriending the tutor on set, and sad to say, years later, we found out that he was actually a pedophile.
Oh, yeah.
So it was very interesting in that aspect that like we actually the tutor on that movie was actually an active pedophile. So yeah, it kind of like hit home, and there's definitely stuff for myself that came out of it after.
Betrayed by her own sick pedophile father. Ultimately, it'll lead to her suicide. Nice work, Daddy.
Probably one of the last times I would have watched it would have been after the moment when I found out about the tutor on that set, and like I had known him for 7 years at that point. Like I'd spent Christmas with the guy and everything, you know, at certain times. So that's kind of where it really hit home, you know, is
Yeah.
when like I had been through the, you know, situation. Like I wasn't full into it, luckily enough. You know, there were other, you know, other boys and other kids that were affected more so than I was in my situation, but it's still that's really when it hit home, you know. After watching that movie then it's like Jesus, you know, it was just it's just a
And the
for
fact
me
that you played like that, like
yeah.
you played the kid of a pedophile.
Yeah, and so it's more just you know, it's a constant reminder that there's just lack of better terms, just shit that happens to everybody, and there's just bad people out there, you know. And you know, I found out about that when I was like 14 or 15, and you know, that's, you know, I was just getting into high school, and yeah, it put a lot of, you know, obviously stress, just, you know, mental whatever on me, but it was also, you know, you could say that's one of the reasons why growing up I got into the, you know, the badder things in life too, you know, and drugs and all that kind of stuff. And just being a child actor, it's, you know, it's not the easiest thing for anybody.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things that it can happen to anyone. And so yeah, like when I would be at parties and everything, you know, of course growing up kids would always flock to me and think, oh, I'm this actor and blah blah blah, you know, I'm untouchable or I'm a unicorn or whatever. And I was always very vocal about what had happened to me, and it was interesting for me to see, you know, how many people that affected. Like I had, you know, guys, girls, whatever, come up to me after speaking about it, being like, you know, like I can't talk about this with anybody, you know, and so
Yeah.
on and so forth, right? And so it's, you know, that situation affects a lot more people than anyone would think. And I think
Yeah.
that's, you know, what I relate it to now when I think of that movie, which is weird, you know, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just kind of a fact of life, I guess, at that point, you know, because it didn't come up on set. It was, like I said, it was years later, and it was never really linked to him. Even my mom, like my mom, you know, it caused her pain for years because she felt it was her fault, right? You know, and
Well,
it's
yeah.
like, you know, it's like she trusted him and she let me, you know, go and stay with him for weekends and stuff. And it was like, yeah, you know, and it even took me reassuring in my mom that it's like, no, that's not your fault. Like that's what they do. That's what predators do. They
Yeah.
prey. They want you to trust them because that's how they get you.